In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern. We're still looking at very cold air moving into the eastern states for basically the foreseeable future. I don't really see a point in which that's going to be different. So we're going to be looking at a long-term major cooldown, kind of similar to what we saw in January, a little bit less intense in my opinion, but it will still be very cold. And numerous snowfall events, including one that is ongoing right now, for states like West Virginia, Maryland, DC, Delaware, areas like that, seeing heavy snowfall as I speak right now. We do have some for the Northeast coming up, more for the Mid-Atlantic, and even the Southeast perhaps now the models are kind of picking up on. So pretty much everybody is going to be seeing chances of snowfall here coming soon, as well as the Midwest and Great Lakes, as well as some pretty major systems also. This is the 6 to 10 day outlook as of today on February 11th. So this runs from the 17th through the 21st, and we can see some warmer air beginning to build for the west. We call this a positive PNA, and this basically in turn forces all the cold to move into the central and eastern states here, which we can see could be pretty intense for a lot of these areas here during that 17th through 21st time frame. When we look at the precipitation as well, we see that the southeast up through the mid-Atlantic and portions of the northeast are expecting above average precipitation here. So a lot of storm systems moving through like this, which will put these areas kind of in the crosshairs for potential snowfall, maybe even areas back in here, definitely something to watch for. And we will see some in here despite the below average precipitation. It doesn't mean no precipitation, so there will be snow chances up there as well. A bit drier for the southwest, which is also common during these positive PNA events. The 8 to 14 day outlook doesn't look much different. This is for the 19th through the 25th, and we see even more warmth building along the west coast, which should force the cold air even further south during this time frame. And we see that the National Weather Service is expecting that all the way down to the Gulf Coast, expecting below average temperatures. So even deeper diving cold air, and the precipitation during this time frame also looks favorable, perhaps for some coastal systems. Maybe we get back into systems moving along that deep south area up the east coast here. So likely rain events down here, thunderstorms as well, frequent during the 19th through 25th. But for these areas, definitely going to have to watch for potential snowfall. We get even drier for the west, and for the Midwest and Great Lakes, we get even drier for these areas as well. Looking at the 3 to 4 week temperature outlook, she'll be for the 22nd through March 7th. Another one of these is going to be coming up in about 3 days. We'll get an update to this, but they do kind of expect the colder temperatures to still be moving in through the kind of upper Midwest and northern plains, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and even the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. I suspect in our next update, we'll see this cold even drop lower here in the east, probably once we get an update here. Again, Friday, these come out every Friday, so just a few days from now. Let's take a look at the past 10 days of temperatures here. And as you can see, we're starting to see cooler anomalies build for areas of the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast, as they have been colder now for a little while during February. I know things started out on a warmer note, but we're starting to see these areas cool, and likely the next areas to go over the coming couple of weeks is going to be this, as these transition to blue over time. Really, these areas are the main areas that'll likely stay warm. We may even see some warming in these pockets as well, due to that positive PNA that'll be building. So just kind of talking about how this is going to evolve over the coming weeks, and really as we're trying to build the picture for what February as a whole will look like looking back. As we take a look at the European model, it's important to note that I think the GFS is the more exciting of the two, in my opinion. As far as snowfall, the European model does have some deeper south, and not super deep south, but I'm talking more northern southeast areas, maybe more like Kentucky and Tennessee getting involved on this European model as opposed to the GFS. But for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, I would say the GFS is the better of the two. With that being said, let's move through. I mean, as we just look at this evening, again, heavy snowfall for areas like Kentucky, southern Ohio, portions of West Virginia, DC, Maryland, Delaware areas there. Just like I mentioned earlier, that'll be happening by about 7 p.m. Areas further south did see snowfall earlier on this morning, but we've seen it slowly but surely move north with that rain snow line. We do have some thunderstorms present throughout these deeper south areas, and we will be taking a look at the Storm Prediction Center outlooks in today's video, so we will see the coming 3 days and beyond of those SPC outlooks. Like I said yesterday, let's move towards this, or tomorrow afternoon, better yet, on Wednesday the 12th, and we do see that snowfall comes to an end. We warm up a little bit, actually. There is a low, develops back to the west, so a warm front, a dry warm front tries to develop out here to the east, and that pushes the warm temperatures to the north. We do see to the northwest of this low, there is a lot of snowfall throughout the plains, Midwest, Great Lakes taking place, so their first kind of hefty snow system on this model run happening as soon as tomorrow on Wednesday afternoon. We do see by that evening that system is a pretty quick mover, and it moves up towards more like New York, Pennsylvania area there. We see some snowfall for the Midwest and Great Lakes left over, but that is coming to an end pretty quickly. We do see the Northeast here seeing some mixed precipitation. There is even some ice down for portions of the Mid-Atlantic. But it's not the most prevalent in the world. We do see mostly rainfall in these areas. Pretty hefty severe weather for a lot of these deep south areas for the day tomorrow. I think we have a slight risk as of now, but again, we will look at that a little bit later on. And then for well into Thursday, we do see portions of the southeast. They only have a general thunderstorm risk for these areas. I think this will eventually stretch up pretty well along that cold front because we do have what's called CAPE. We're going to talk more about that over the coming months, but that stands for convective available potential energy. My bad. It's been a while since I've said it. So convective available potential energy, and that's going to be an equation between your humidity and temperatures that basically tries to put together the number for the amount of thunderstorm fuel, if you will, that's available. And there is a lot of it for this time of year that's going to be around for these areas. So I think thunderstorms will be possible. We do see a very hefty storm system for the southwest and portions of really just the entire west coast by the time we're reaching Thursday afternoon. We do see snowfall throughout the Sierra Nevada, portions of the Cascades up here in Oregon, and even some of the very western Rockies there across areas like Idaho, Nevada, and even extending close to Utah. Let's take this towards Friday afternoon, and we see this storm will really expand over the west as we see mountainous snowfall for all of the major mountain ranges out there, rainfall in lower elevation areas, and much drier in the east by Friday the 14th. Let's take a look at Saturday the 15th because this is when we get going with our next snow system. And again, the plains, Midwest, Great Lakes could be in prime position as we have this low over eastern Oklahoma here. We do see some snow starting out for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. It just depends because we have a low here. You know, you have this stretching warm front look. Is that going to expand very far to the north? Because if so, that rain snow line is going to keep creeping northward over time. Or is it going to remain relatively stationary? If that's the case, we could see the snowfall just kind of prevail and keep going in these areas. And I would say at hours 100, there's enough time for either of those to still occur. We are looking at some severe weather chances with this one as well, as the National Weather Service in the extended range is indicating some severe weather possibilities here around this time frame. So we'll look at that as well later on. I want to take us overnight and see kind of how this one develops. This is 1 a.m. By the time we're looking at Sunday, February 16th. So again, 1 a.m. very early on that day. We do see 994 right here. Really long cold front here where again severe weather will likely be a probability, not even a possibility. Snowfall for the upper Midwest, well really just the Midwest, and then the Great Lakes. And we see this rain snow line has crept a little northward. We see parts of northern New York and northern New England staying snowfall, but that rain snow line is creeping northward. We do see by time we're reaching Sunday afternoon that creeping of that warm front continues northward, and we see ice and snow mostly for northern New England as this low is basically near the Finger Lakes regions of New York. Snowfall still going on for the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes by this point, and we have a secondary low underneath, which is helping to create just really rich amounts of moisture for these areas in the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast, where again showery and thunderstorm activity could really prevail. Snowfall across the Northwest is also taking place by this point, and the 16th, 17th is that date that we've been really indicating for the deep cold air to arrive. So we see that moving in very quickly behind this system. And by the time we reach Monday afternoon, we see that we are fully engulfed in a pretty major eastern trough. A little bit of a positive P&A here, trying to create a ridge out west, and we see a lot of your cold is just kind of diving through the central states and into a lot of your eastern states here overall. Snowfall is prevailing over the Northwest into the plains and we have showers of snowfall across the northeast regions as well here in that deep cold air mass. Tuesday the 18th, again, we're pretty cold in the east. It looks like something wants to come together here, so we're seeing snowfall across some of the central southern Rockies into some of the central southern plains like Kansas, Oklahoma, into Missouri. So some deeper south snowfall. We see this one really dig deep. We see this one dig very deep for Wednesday the 19th here. Most of your low pressure is near the Gulf here. We have snowfall again, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri, even stretching into West Virginia and Virginia. And as we just keep going with this one, look at this. It moves off the southeast coast here. Pretty classic track. I've seen these types of storms before. These, and obviously we're close to the 10-day mark, so a lot can change. I want to add that disclaimer, but when we see these types of storm tracks, this is some of my bigger snowstorms that I ever get, are these types of tracks where a lot of these areas can end up getting 5, 6, 7, 8 inches or more in this type of scenario, especially if this low builds quite a bit off that southeast coast. We do see it gets pretty strong. 1,002 here, heavy snowfall for portions of North Carolina, Virginia, even up into southern Delaware and parts of southern Maryland. Again, this is by 7 a.m. February 20th, so we're about 9 days away here. Very far out. Definitely time for things to change, but this low keeps intensifying down to a 992 as it's moving out. Heavy snowfall prevailing in here, and then it would eventually come to an end, but that would likely be easily a 6 to 10 inch snowstorm in that type of scenario. Maybe even some areas seeing like 10 to 15 inches in that type of system where it just kind of lags by the southeast coast. Definitely something to watch, but the GFS model is going to disagree. Kind of a spoiler alert, so we'll see that in a minute. Friday looks very quiet. This is Friday afternoon, 1 p.m. I mean, the 21st, and we're seeing very little activity here at this point. Maybe a little bit of snowfall for the Rockies, but very, very inactive by that point. But quickly by Saturday, we get our next system building in. Don't know where the low really is at this point. Probably somewhere in here. Snowfall to the north for portions of the Midwest and Plains. Rainfall and thunderstorms for Texas, Oklahoma. As we head kind of overnight towards Sunday, we see this low is not really strengthening very much. There's some broad low pressure in here. It's very weak, and we get light snowfall for the Ohio Valley due to that, and some rain showers, maybe some thunderstorms here underneath. But again, very little in the way of activity. And this one wants to take a similar track to that 20th system, but it's so weak. I could see the case for this easily turning to snowfall and it looking like a pretty similar system, but it's just pretty marginal cold air. Weaker system overall. It would need to change quite a bit to see anything hefty as far as snowfall come out of that, and it moves out. But that's a pretty close call. I'm not gonna lie. That one is, if let's say that was 5 days away, I would tell you that could easily turn into a snowstorm. But the problem here is that this is 300 plus hours out, so I can't even tell you if it's going to be here on the next model run overall. When we look at the west, we see a very, very vigorous positive PNA. This is more similar to what we saw in January, and it's built all the way up into the eastern areas of Canada, high pressure, warm temperatures, and the higher this goes, the lower the cold goes as a rule of thumb, and we see this cold diving southward towards the Gulf Coast. Arctic air, really, very, very cold for the night of Monday the 24th into the 25th, and if this trend continues, we could see deep cold for an extended period of time. Even by Tuesday here, it does reach the Florida panhandle, areas in the Gulf, areas off the southeast. Very deep Arctic air to end the model run around that 25th, 26th time frame, so even deeper cold air in the long range could be possible. Let's take a peek at the GFS model. Again, our current snow system. We're not going to see too many differences. We're so close to this one. And this one as well, very similar. A strong upper Midwest snowfall event, Great Lakes. And then it mixes for the Northeast. But this next system, 15th, 16th, we see is a little further south. It's a very intense one, 988 over Pennsylvania. And we get Ohio Valley snowfall. We get Northeast snowfall. Pretty intense. As we keep going past that, this is when that deep cold air comes in. And again, right around the 20th is when the European model has the deeper south snowfall event. And it looks similar right here. You get snowfall in Kansas, Oklahoma. Your low is near the Gulf Coast. But what we're going to see is it really wants to cut in as opposed to what the European model shows where it wants to kind of dive southward. This is weird because the GFS model is usually a little too far to the south. The European model is usually further north than it, but we're seeing a complete opposite here, which we did see quite a bit in January as well, with that kind of toss up. And we see this one, yeah, just really cuts northward. We see more of the Ohio Valley, Midwest, Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast get this one, and it ends up being a pretty major system itself. Then we get a deeper south low here around the 24th. So they kind of flip places. The European model had that 20th one looking a lot more like this, and the 24th one looked a lot more like what the GFS model just showed for the previous storm. This one's in the deeper south, but we can see the cold air is really far from it. It's way up here in the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast. So it needs to creep up northward, which it does, but these deeper south areas don't really get much snowfall from it. We see all the way down to the Smoky Mountains get snowfall here, pretty heavy too. Areas of Ohio, Pennsylvania, New England, and it's marginally warm. We see mixing going on for a lot of it, so that would be a troubling system to try to forecast. And by the end of it, I mean, we do end up with one of these days on Thursday, the 27th, where we have the southeast ridge kind of moving up the east coast, but it's pretty clear we have more cold air really coming in. So still no end in sight here either. When we look at the total precipitation on the European model, we continue to see dwindling totals out west. Still very decent, but not enough to be above average, at least not widespread. We do see the deeper south, the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic, the Great Lakes and Northeast look really good in terms of precipitation here. When we look at the anomalies, again, you get some above, some below out west. It's decent, but it's not nearly as above as it used to be just a couple weeks ago. And we do see highly above average precipitation for a lot of the east here, where a lot of your snow threats will originate. Speaking of snowfall, here's the total snowfall on the European model, where the west still does phenomenal. That's still been the case for a long time now. The Great Lakes, Midwest, Plains do great, upwards of 10 to 20 inches in some of these brighter pink areas. So very plowable snowfall events, very major. We do see plowable snowfall across the entire Ohio Valley as well, where we get at least 5, 6, 7 inches in some of these blue and purple pockets, but the pinks again are going to be closer to 10 to 15, so really decent. This area, my neck of the woods, does great as well with that single snowstorm, again 10 to 15 inches here in those bright pinks. We see West Virginia as well. And then we get a kind of gap in here for portions of the Mid-Atlantic, eastern Pennsylvania into like New York City, northern New Jersey, Long Island, and then New England gets the plowable amounts again as well. GFS model is going to disagree in some pretty big ways. Most of it goes northward, and we see so it's northward for this event and some of the deeper south events, but for those ones that cut in on the European model, more like this, it actually has a more southerly trajectory with them, and we end up getting a lot more snowfall for these areas in particular. So I know a lot of you will be cheering for this one, but we see a lot of the plains, Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley do even better on this GFS model, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast. All of these areas basically end up with more snowfall on this GFS model as opposed to the European. Speaking of the European, here's the temperatures. So again, we're going to get a couple of little southeast ridge days like Thursday where we end up with above normal temperatures, but that's going to usher in colder temperatures. Again, brief warm up for Sunday the 16th as well. And then we get a more major cool down here for Tuesday the 18th. It really just sticks around here. It's Friday the 21st. It's still there over the east. And we continue to get the brutal Arctic air all the way to the 26th here with overall warmer anomalies out west. So you get the colder here for a lot of the east, warmer in the west. Pretty classic and straightforward stuff. GFS model, it's really going to be the same. I mean, we get the deep Arctic air here around the 17th, 18th, 19th. It sticks around for a while, still to the 20th. We do start to see some more warming here towards the end on this model, a little bit more up in the air. So I would say this is a potential end. Let's say this model's correct and we end up at this point. This is messy. We could really end up with anything once this gets cleaned up. So we could end up with cold in the west, warm in the east, or warm in the west, cold in the east. And you have a little bit of both on screen here, as you can tell. So definitely hard to differentiate where we're going to end up according to this model. We'll know more over the coming days, though, of course, for the 25th and beyond, I would say. Storm Prediction Center, here we go. We do see Day one categorical outlook, we do see general thunderstorm risk there in the lighter green areas, and then a level 1 marginal risk for a lot of Texas into Louisiana, and then Louisiana into southern Mississippi and Alabama here. So a little bit of severe weather risk today for Tuesday the 11th, but nothing too crazy. Day 2 is definitely looking like the bigger day. As we can see, a general thunderstorm risk expands quite a bit. We see the marginal risk there. Again, it's going to be your level 1 severe weather area for the deep south. And then we even get a level 2 slight risk for Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Panhandle into areas of east or western Georgia. So definitely the bigger day there, like I mentioned. Here's day 3 on Thursday. And like I said, I think this is a little bit too suppressed right there for the deeper south. I think that we will end up getting this kind of all the way up. I might be being a little biased, but we do have Cape in this area. We do have stronger storms moving through, so I just suspect that this will be expanded once we get closer to Thursday. And I want to show you the extended outlook as well, because on day 5, this is what we're looking at for, again, Saturday the 15th. A 15% chance of severe weather in these areas within 25 miles of a given location. And this roughly translates to a slight risk. So that's a pretty big slight risk area, you know, eastern Texas, Louisiana, southeastern Arkansas, areas of Mississippi, Alabama, southern Tennessee, into western Georgia, western Florida Panhandle. That's a large slight risk. You could imagine there is a chance for maybe an upgrade to enhanced risk in some of these areas with how large that slight risk area is. Typically, if they indicate a severe weather risk beyond 3 days out, which is considered their extended range, so days 4 through 8 is their extended range. If they do indicate it like this, that typically means that there's a pretty elevated chance of severe weather. So we'll be watching this Saturday, the 15th date, really closely, because we're going to have a low up to the north with a dragging cold front, and that cold front is just going to extend through this whole area, bringing strong thunderstorms. So we'll watch it closely. We'll continue to show this every single day for you guys. We do upload every single day, as we just kind of alluded to, so be sure to subscribe. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.